Welcome to Precalculus Concept 11D. Complex numbers. We're going to perform operations with square roots of negative numbers. 4 boxes. Here we go. Here's box number 1. Let me scoot this up for you a little bit. Okay. Roots of negative numbers. So do you remember all of this stuff? I think that you do. 3 squared literally means just, the number 3 times 3, which of course gives us a positive 9. Not a big deal yet. Negative 3 squared means negative 3 times negative 3, which also gives us the number 9. So you can clearly see that there are two numbers, namely 3 and negative 3, such that when you square it, you get back the same value of positive 9. That's why when we take the square root of 9, we say that it's plus or minus the number 3, because the square root of 9 means what number by itself multiplied will give you back the number 9. Okay, so that's what that means so far, and hopefully that rings a bell to you. Okay, so now taking this a step further, okay, if I want to then talk about the square root of negative 9, well, then this is going to give us plus or minus 3i. Plus or minus 3i. The reason is because if I took 3i and I squared it, it would give me 9i squared, which would give me I squared is negative 1, so this gives me negative 9. Now if I take negative 3i and I square it, this is going to give me negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9, and then I squared, which again gives me negative 9. So there is a plus or minus 3i that gives me the same principle back, the negative 9, similar to as it was before. Okay, this idea leads us into box 2, where we're going to be talking about what's known as the principal square root of a negative number, the principal square root of a negative number. So for us in this class, the way that we're going to describe this is the square root of negative b is going to be I times the square root of b. That's how we're going to write this. Now the way that I get there is by taking, this is the square root of negative 1 multiplied by the square root of b, and the square root of negative 1 of course is I, and that's how we get I radical b. This part only is called the principal square root. This is the one that we're going to be dealing with. We don't need to worry about the plus or minus anymore because this is going to be the principal square root. So let me give you a correct way and an incorrect way to talk about principal square roots and so on and so forth. So for us, if I take the square root of negative 25 times the square root of negative 4, the correct way to deal with this would be the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 25 multiplied by the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4. The square root of negative 1 is I, the square root of 25 is 5, the principal square root. The square root of negative 1 is I, and the principal square root of 4 is 2. Multiplying these together, you get 10i squareds, which of course gives you the number of negative 10, because I squared is worth negative 1. This is the correct way to do it. A lot of people do this instead. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, well, this is the square root of negative 25 times negative 4, which is the square root of positive 100, which is a positive 10. Well, that is incorrect. The reason that's incorrect is because it totally ignores the fact that there is a square root of a negative number in there, and this is highly wrong, and a lot of students make this mistake. So make sure that you address the answer using i's whenever there's a square root of a negative number. Okay, let's do 3 examples together. Example A is the square root of negative 18 minus the square root of 8. So I'm going to start by saying this is going to be I times the square root of 18 minus I times the square root of 8. That's how you deal with the negatives underneath the radical. Now keep simplifying. This is going to be I times the square root of 9 times the square root of 2 minus I times the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. The square root of 9 is the number 3, so this is going to give me 3i rad 2. And of course the square root of 4 is the number 2, so this is minus 2i rad 2s. Now since I have rad 2s, I have like terms here. I have 3i rad 2 minus 2i rad 2, which make 1i radical 2. So the correct answer is just I radical 2. Let's do example B together. It says negative 1 plus the square root of negative 5 all squared. Remember, that means negative 1 plus the square root of negative 5 times negative 1 plus the square root of negative 5. Now I'm going to rewrite this as negative 1 plus I root 5 and negative 1 plus an I root 5. And then I'm going to go ahead and use FOIL. So negative 1 and negative 1, multiply those together. That gives you a value of 1. So the outers would be negative I root 5s. The inners would be negative I root 5. And then the last term would be I positive I squared. And the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just the number 5. So moving along, I get 1 minus 2 I root 5s. I squared is worth negative 1, so negative 1 times 5 is just negative 5. So 1 minus 5 is going to give me negative 4 minus 2I root 5s. And that is how you do that problem. Okay, part C says negative 25 plus the square root of negative 50 over 15. So follow along with me as we do this example here. So this is going to give me negative 25 plus I radical 25 radical 2 when I break up the square root of negative 50, all divided by 15. So this is negative 25 plus, this is going to be 5I radical 2 over 15. I can break up my fraction to negative 25 over 15 plus 5I over 15 rad 2s. Simplifying this, negative 25 over 15, that's negative 5/3. And then 5 over 15 is a third, so I'm going to have I root 2 over 3. And you can leave it just like this. This is totally fine. Okay, box number 4 is a U-try. I want you to do negative 2 plus radical negative 3 squared. Hopefully you got the right answer of 1 minus 4I radical 3. Here's how I did it. I wrote it out. I said negative 2 plus rad 3 times negative 2 plus a rad 3. Then I changed the radical of negative 3 to I radical 3. Then I used FOIL. Remember that I times I is I squared, and rad 3 times rad 3 is just a 3. Simplifying down, you get 1 minus 4I rad 3.